All right, I'd like to take the Word of God with me, and if you would, turn to the book of Ecclesiastes. We are in the 4th chapter today, Ecclesiastes chapter 4. How many of you guys, by a show of hands, how many of you are really enjoying the book of Ecclesiastes? I know I certainly am. I think it just keeps on getting better. I've really been enjoying this. It's a very practical book. It's a very applicable book. And mostly because it's so real, because it's so honest, because it doesn't mess around. It says the way it is. And there's a lot of really valuable lessons for us here. And I'm really looking forward to what we've got here today in the 4th chapter. For the sake of remembrance, and for those of you that haven't been here for the last several weeks, I'll give just a kind of brief synopsis of the book of Ecclesiastes. It was written by an old man, a king of Israel. His name was Solomon, and he lived his entire life with everything that the world had to offer him, and yet he got to the end of his life, and he was still miserable. He was still alone. He was still very unhappy, very unsatisfied. Somehow, everything that he had had in his life, all the things that had come his way, never brought him any kind of satisfaction, never brought him any kind of joy. And so he set out in the closing years of his life to write this book of Ecclesiastes. He gathers the people together and he explains all that he's learned about the purpose, the meaning of life. Why are we here? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What is the purpose? What is the meaning of our existence? And so it's a very, very valuable book, and we've recorded all of these sermons, and if you're interested in some of the earlier ones, particularly the first one gives us a more in-depth talk about what the book of Ecclesiastes is all about. It's on our YouTube page. I'd encourage you to go on and listen to that if you haven't already. But we are in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter number 4. And by means of introduction, I want to tell you about how this all started, how this all came about. The Bible tells us that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he created the sun, he created the wind, he created the grass, he created the trees, he created water, he created land, he created fish and fowl, he created animals, all the creeping things that walk upon the face of the earth, Genesis chapter 1 tells us. And then on the 6th day, he created a man. And then he put that man in the middle of the garden. He said, Adam, I'm putting you in charge. I'm giving you dominion over the entire earth, and I'm giving you a job. I'm giving you a task. I want you to take care of all the things that I've created. I want you to name all the animals. That's what the Bible says. He gave him the task, the name of the job of naming each and every one of the animals. And can you imagine what a monumental task that must have been? I mean, it's just a beautiful picture. It's absolutely incredible. When you let your imagination wander to exactly what must have gone on that day. You know, God's got his little Excel spreadsheet over here, and he's writing down all the names of the animals, the angel of the database, and he's putting all these names together. And Adam has the animals walk one by one past him. They'll come 2 by 2 later. And he comes, and the first animal that comes by, he gets real creative, and he has these amazing names for him. That's a duckbill platypus. That is a bonobo chimpanzee. That is a hippopotamus. But he just keeps on going and going and going. Imagine how many names he must have had to come up with. You know, and all the different kind of animals. Eventually, he kind of gets really worn out and really tired after 10,000 different species of animals. And one more walks past him, and he says, dog. And God says, wait a second, that's my name backwards. I think you're kind of phoning it in a little bit, aren't you? And then another one walks past and he says, that's a cat. And God says, wait a second, I didn't make those. Where'd that come from? You guys need to laugh. My goodness, you guys are barely giving me a smile. Anyway, and there are all kinds of animals that God had made, and he made Adam to name all of them. But despite the fact that he must have named thousands and thousands of different species of animals, none of them had that one special thing. None of them could identify with Adam in that special way. None of them could really be a true companion to Adam. And God said, it is not good for man to be alone. Otherwise, he won't know what to wear. And so God said, Adam, I want you to take a nap. I want you to go to sleep. I'm going to make something cool. And God, I don't know how he did it, but God made a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. And he comes in and he takes a rib out of Adam somehow or other, and he creates a woman. He creates Adam 2.0. He did a much better job the second time around. And Adam wakes up, and he comes, and God brings the woman, Eve, to Adam. And as we all know, Adam said, whoa, man, that's incredible. I've never seen anything like that before. None of the other animals could compare. You know, there was a study just this week. It was announced in the news that scientists and anthropologists and evolutionists and whatever you want to call it, paleontologists in Africa found a new species of something that kind of crossed between an ape and a man. It walked about 5 feet high. It buried its dead. It used simple hand tools, had a brain about the size of a baseball, and wore a little hat that said, "Make America Great Again." True story. But despite the fact that there's a lot of animals that might have had some characteristics that were similar to Adam and to Eve, God created these two people to live in perfect harmony, to live in community, to live in oneness. and intimacy and love. God created all the rest of the things in the world, and he said it is good. When he created light, he said it is good. When he created land and water, he said it is good. When he created all the animals, he said it is good. But when he created man and woman and put them together, he said it is very, very good. God put within each and every one of us a desire and a need to be loved, to be wanted, to be led, to belong, to have some sort of community that we belong to. And yet, more and more, we look at the world around us and we become more and more isolated and alone, even when you're surrounded by other people. You know, it's very easy to be married and still feel very much alone. It's easy to work with hundreds of other people every day and still feel alone. It's easy to come to a church with 50 or 60 other people and still feel like you're completely alone. Because companionship and community and intimacy is not just something that comes when you're surrounded by other people. It's a relationship that must be built. It's a relationship that must be worked on. It doesn't just happen overnight. But even though we're probably more connected to people than we ever were before, we still find ourselves feeling more and more alone and isolated and distant from the rest of the world. And this is something that's been going on for a long time, and I kind of think that it's getting worse. You can kind of credit it to the rise of social media, and I'm certainly not against that. I've got Facebook, and I've got Twitter, and Instagram, and all the rest of these, social media websites. I'm a part of them. I got nothing against them. But the truth of the matter is that a lot of times these can lead to this sort of isolation and aloneness. Even if you've got 300 friends that you basically got just by clicking confirm or add friend or follow, even if you've got these, hundreds of people that you follow or that you're connected to, you can still feel completely alone. And why is that? Because you're not really getting to know that person. You're getting to know what they want to put forward about that person. You get to project your own image of yourself and what you want other people to know. And unfortunately, it's often not reality. Not that we're going out of our way to pretend to be something that we're not, but in my own case, when I put something on Facebook, what am I trying to project? What's the image that I'm trying to give? I'm trying to, let people know that I'm thoughtful and I'm smart and I'm handsome and that I kind of funny from time to time. I want people to know that I'm passionate about what I believe in, and sometimes I come across in a way that people don't really find appealing, and people get upset at me, because I've got 300 friends and they all see me from different perspectives, they see me in different ways, and not all of them know the whole story. And so I say things that might not necessarily be appealing to, all of my friends, and people get in, trouble with this kind of stuff all the time. But you can have a lot of friends, and you can put stuff on Facebook, and you can put stuff on Twitter and Instagram and all this all the time, and yet you can still feel completely alone. Because you're not actually getting to know that person. You might know what their cat looks like or what their name is. You might know what they had for dinner last night, but do you really know what that person is like? Do you know who that person really and truly is? And the reason why we feel isolated, the reason that we feel alone, the reason that community and communion is just completely killed within us is because of sin. And this is what Satan does. He wants to get us alone. He wants to get us apart. The Bible says in 1 Peter chapter 5 that our enemy walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And when you watch National Geographic and you see all these lions that are attacking the gazelles, they don't go after an entire herd, do they? They might run into it and scatter the crowd, but what are they trying to do? They're trying to pick on that one smallest, weakest, maybe oldest, sickest animal. Get it completely alone, where it's defenseless and has nobody that has its back, where they can make easy pickings out of that one poor, pathetic animal. And that's exactly what Satan wants to do to each and every one of us. He wants to get us alone. He wants to get us isolated. He wants to get us far away from anybody else that can protect us from himself. Sin divides. Sin isolates. This is something that's been going on since original sin. We get this idea when we read Genesis chapter 3 that it's just the story about a naked family that's running around in a garden, and they have a talking snake for a pet, and they eat a poisonous apple, and then God gets upset at them and he says, you darn kids, get off my lawn. And that's basically all there is to the story. But the truth is, sin has real consequences. And these things that we're talking about today are part of those real consequences, this loneliness. You wonder why you feel lonely? It's because of sin. You wonder why you feel isolated? It's because of sin. You wonder why you can't get along with other people? It's because of sin. You wonder why you feel like nobody cares about me, really? It's because of sin. And Solomon understood this, perhaps better than anybody else, and he knew that it is a real problem. He said, it is not good for a man to be alone. And this is what we're going to look at today in the 4th chapter of Ecclesiastes. If you look at verse number 9, Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse number 9, he says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. I don't know about you, but I don't like to work alone. I can do it. I can get a lot done, but I can get a lot more done if I've got somebody else helping me. And I'm actually going to be able to enjoy what I'm doing if somebody else is there beside me. When I'm working on a men's dinner, or when I'm working on a remodeling project, I can probably get 3 or 4 times as much done with one other person beside me as I could by myself. It's exponential. And you actually get to enjoy the fruit of your labor so much more than you would otherwise. He says, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion, but woe to him who is alone when he falls. Talking about life alert. I've fallen and I can't get up. Solomon says, listen, if you're alone and you fall down, and I'm not making fun of it. My grandmother's got a life alert. I'm not making fun of anybody, but it's a real truth. It's a real factor. That if somebody falls and there's nobody there to pick them back up, what's going to happen to them? They're going to lay there. They're going to be on the floor, exactly where they were 10 hours ago. And it's an extremely sad thing. You need to have companionship. You need to have somebody there to help you back up. And we're not just talking about, the physically falling down. That might be part of it, and that's a very real part of life. But what about when we are fallen and wounded emotionally? What about when we fall spiritually? What about when we fall financially? You need to have somebody there to help you, to keep you from falling in the first place, but also to help you up when you do fall. He says in verse number 11, again, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? Now, you look at us, here this morning. When I came over here this morning at like 9 o'clock, it was a really nice, cool temperature in here. Weather outside is finally getting to the point where we're not sweating to death. And it was probably, about 70 degrees in here. It was comfortable. But then all you guys came in, and all of a sudden, heat went right up. All these bodies, they create a lot of heat. They create a lot of warmth. We noticed this with our son, Jacob. He puts off a lot of heat. He's like a little hot water bottle. And he's 3 weeks old today. And we're really looking forward to the winter because it's really nice to be able to hold him. I mean, right now when it's hot inside the house, you're like sweating and get this kid away from me. But in the winter, it's going to be really nice because we warm him while he warms us. I remember one time last year, during the winter, it was like February or something like that, our furnace went out. And so we had like no heat in the house whatsoever. And this is one of those nights when it was like 30 below. So by the time we went to bed, it was like 40 degrees inside the house. It was like really, really cold. And so we actually got all the blankets in the house. We brought them to our bedroom. We piled them on the bed. My wife and I, we huddled together as close as we possibly could. We really don't sleep, like that all the time. Yeah, I know that's probably something you don't want to hear. We like our space. But that night, we wanted to be close together. And then, actually, interestingly enough, the 3 cats, which normally are off on their own, we've got 3 cats at the house, and they're completely obnoxious. Normally, they sleep on their own, but that night, because there was no other heat anywhere else, we were their only source of heat. So you got these 3 cats that are like climbing on top of us and sleeping there all through the night because they wanted some warmth. And this is what Solomon is talking about. It's a very real factor. 2 people can keep each other warm. It's an exponential source of heat. You're going to keep more warm together than you would separately. And he says in verse number 13, though one may be overpowered by another, 2 can withstand him. And this is talking about somebody else having your back. Not necessarily if you're in a fist fight. That might be the case for some of you. I'm pretty sure I could take just about anybody in here. But then you've got... But even in an emotional fight or a disagreement with somebody else, if somebody else has got your back, you're not going to be overtaken. You're going to be able to survive. You're going to be able to make it through that fight. It's good to be able to have somebody there that has your back. And this is what Solomon is saying. He says, and a 3-fold cord is not quickly broken. 1 cord, 1 piece of string, you can snap it no problem. But you weave 3 pieces of cord together, 3 strings, you're going to have a lot harder time. You're going to need a lot more force to be able to break that bond. And we use this verse when we're talking about marriage. If you bring a man and a woman and God together, you weave them together in 3, in 1, it's going to be that much harder to break it up. When one person pulls out of that cord, it's going to be that much easier. And both of them fall out, or when God is left out of your marriage, you're going to have a hard time keeping together. And even just the slightest strain on your marriage might be all it takes to break it up. So Solomon is giving these multiple examples and these word pictures about why it's so important to have companionship, to have people all around us, people that love us, people that support us, people that have our back. And I think we can all agree that this is very, very important. But the question that I'm trying to answer this morning is, why do we have to not have this companionship? What cuts away from that? What makes it so difficult to have love and companionship? What makes it so difficult for us to have this intimacy and this oneness with other people, whether it be in our marriage, whether it be in our family, whether it be in our workplace, or maybe even in the church? Why do we feel so isolated? Why are we so lonely? Why is it that nobody cares about us? Why is it that we feel as though I'm the only one that really matters to me? I've said before that if number one is all you're ever looking out for, number one is all you're ever going to have. Why do we feel this way? Why do we feel isolated? Why do we feel lonely? Why is it that nobody cares about us? Well, we got a couple answers for you here. Is that clock in the back really right? Is it only 10 till? My goodness. Anyway, all right, we got a couple of verses for you. I'll try to hurry. Verse number 4. Again, I saw that for all the toil and for every skillful work, a man is envied by his neighbor. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. If you're taking notes, why do we feel isolated? What leads to this lack of companionship? Number 1, competition. Everything we want, everything that we see, we want for ourselves because somebody else has it. Now, competition is not a bad thing in and of itself. I am, by nature, a competitive person. I got where I am today because of my competitive nature. And you might say, well, that doesn't say a whole lot. You must not be a very good competitor. But the truth of the matter is that competition is a good thing. That's how we get better product. That's how we get better service. That's how we get better prices. Competition is not a bad thing in and of itself. But when it comes to a personal level, when we are competing with other people for stuff, for position, for prestige, for social status, when we're trying to keep up with the Joneses, this is probably one of the best ways to kill community. Because when you're in competition with somebody else, whether you're looking for their stuff, whether you're looking for their positions, as Solomon says, even when you're looking to have their skill set, it becomes you versus them. Because if they're above you on the ladder, well, then you want to be above them, but you can't be above them without them being beneath you. Competition is not a bad thing in and of itself, but it is an easy way for us to lose the sense of community because it becomes us versus them. And we believe that the key to our own happiness is being at the top of the heap. Well, Solomon got to the top. He made it all the way up. But he found out that it's extremely lonely up there. And by the time you get there, you've stepped on so many people on your way up that ascent that none of them really want anything to do with you. Number 2, self-sufficiency, if you're taking notes. The fool, verse number 5, the fool folds his hands and consumes his own flesh. This is sometimes used as a reference for laziness and idleness, and that might be what he's talking about, but to me, I think it's talking about folding your own hands rather than reaching out and taking the hand of somebody else that's trying to help you. How many of you have ever heard somebody say, I don't need anybody. I am self-made. I don't need anybody's help. I don't need anybody's assistance. I'm going to do it on my own. We've all heard somebody say say something like that. And how sad is that? When people are reaching out and they're trying to help somebody and we have this sense of pride and arrogance where we don't need anybody else and we're going to do it on our own. This is what Solomon's saying. They fold their own hands and they eat their own flesh. This is a self-destructive tendency. You need other people, but you can't reach out to help somebody else without them helping you. That's the way that it's got to be. You shouldn't be a mooch. You shouldn't be taking advantage of people. But this is what community is really all about. It's about helping somebody else, whether you're helping them get back up, whether you're helping them stay up, reaching out and helping somebody else. Rather than wrapping your arms around yourself and rather than folding your own hands together, if you can reach out in love and compassion and selflessness and you try to help somebody else in their struggles. This is this world of hyper self-sufficiency where we just don't need anybody. And let me say, it is easy to feel this way sometimes when you've been hurt by somebody that was supposed to be there for you. When somebody was supposed to help you, when somebody had promised you something, and then they go back on their promise and they hurt you, it's really easy to feel that way. That I don't need anybody. I'm just going to be let down by them again and again and again. And it's easy to feel that way, but it's a self-destructive tendency. You're going to eat your own flesh, is what Solomon is saying here. When you say that I don't need anybody, who are you really saying it for? If you put this on Facebook, is where I see it all the time. I don't need anybody. I can do this on my own. Who are you putting it out there for? Because if nobody really cares about you and nobody's really helping you, then who are you posting that for? If nobody really cares. And number 3 is busy work. I've got an ad I want to show you this morning. This is an ad that was put out by Cadillac. I'm going to have Jack go ahead and play it for us. It's just a minute long. And this is very applicable to what I'm talking about. You just go ahead and play it.
It's so hard. For what? For this? For stuff? Other countries, they work, they stroll home, they stop by the cafe, they take August off. Off. Why aren't you like that? Why aren't we like that? Because we're crazy-driven, hard-working believers, that's why. Those other countries think we're nuts. Whatever. Were the Wright brothers insane? Bill Gates, Les Paul, Ali. Were we nuts when we pointed to the moon? That's right. We went up there, and you know what we got? Bored. So we left. Got a car up there, left the keys in it. Do you know why? Because we're the only ones going back up there, that's why. But I digress. It's pretty simple. You work hard, you create your own luck, and you gotta believe anything is possible. As for all the stuff, that's the upside of only taking 2 weeks off in August. N'est-ce pas?
Yes. Were we crazy? Were we nuts? And my answer is a resounding yes. Look at all the things that he was asking. You know, why do we work so hard? For stuff? He doesn't say no, it's not for stuff. But what's the real message of this ad? You might not have picked up on all of it at the beginning, but that's basically what he's asking. Why do we work so hard? For busy work, to have something to do, to be productive, to actually accomplish something. Whether we're doing it for anything at all. The overall message of this ad to me, maybe I'm wrong, I'm definitely not in their target customer base, but the real answer to his question basically is, you know, we might be working ourselves and driving ourselves into an early grave, but at least we're not doing it in some crappy little car. We're doing it in a Cadillac. But what's the purpose? He is nuts. He is crazy. If I was in their target audience, I would say, you know, I'm not going to drive a Cadillac primarily because I don't want to be like that guy. Does anybody look at him and think, man, he looks happy, he looks satisfied. He's got all this stuff. Maybe if that's what you're going after, if you're trying to be materialistic, you might be happy. But really, what's going on here? This ad is very clever. It definitely appeals to the patriotic set and people that have that mindset, working hard. But he says, you know, we've done things like, you know, we put a car on the moon. We went to the moon. We pointed to it for whatever reason. Have you ever wondered why anybody ever wanted to go to the moon? I mean, I wasn't there back then, but what point was there to that anyway? I've never really been able to understand that. He says, we put a car on the moon. We left the keys in it because we're the only ones that are crazy enough and stupid enough to go back for it. Sometimes we got to wonder, what is all this busy work for? That's number 3, if I hadn't already said it. Busy work. This is probably one of the main things that tears away the community and the oneness and the intimacy that we're supposed to have, is when we're too darn busy with our lives and with our work to actually develop friendship, to develop relationships. He says in verse number 6, better a handful with quietness than both hands full, together with toil and grasping for the wind. He says it's better to have a handful of stuff, one handful, with some quietness, with some time off. He says, you know, all these other countries, they take a siesta, they go to the coffee shop on their way home, they take the whole month of August off, and I'm not necessarily saying you should take 4.5 weeks off in a row. I don't think I'd do that. I could be crazy. But he says all the rest of these countries, they're not really that consumed with productivity, with actually doing anything. He almost like he's making fun of them. But look, it's better to have a handful with quietness, with some time to yourself to actually be able to enjoy your life and to enjoy your family, than to have 2 handfuls together with toil and grasping for the wind, this wild goose chase with no goose. What are you trying to produce? What are you trying to do with your life? Now, I know that there's a lot of people that you know, this isn't them. They're not working 70 hours a week, but I know that there are some people that are. And maybe you're in that season of your life where you do need to be working that much. But that shouldn't be a way of life forever. That's not the way that we're supposed to be. That's not how God made us. He made us to work. Paul says in 1 Thessalonians that if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. And I agree with that. But we're supposed to also have a time of rest. I believe that at least 1/7 of your time, not necessarily just Sunday, we're not talking about the Sabbath only, but I think that at least 1/7 of your time, one out of 7 days, should be rest, should be quietness. You can work and you can strive and you can try to do and do, but what are you actually doing? You are driving yourself into an early grave. Number 4, materialism. How many of you have enough money? Like if somebody handed you $1,000 or you found $1,000 on the street, you'd be like, I don't know what to do with this. Burn it or wipe my nose with it or something like that, throw it away. You know, you might think, well, I've got enough for what I need, but you could always use more money, right? Well, Solomon says that our eyes are never satisfied with riches. Verse number 7, then I returned and I saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone without companion. He hath neither son nor brother, yet there is no end to all his labors, nor is his eye satisfied with riches. But he never asks, for whom do I toil and deprive myself of good? This also is vanity and a grave misfortune. He says these are people, and this goes right back to the workaholicism, to the busy work that we put ourselves through. When we look at materialism and what we're trying to gather, what we're trying to produce, what we're trying to collect, we never stop to ask ourselves why. And for who are we doing this? Who is really the beneficiary of all this stuff? Maybe you're collecting stuff for you, and it's nice to have good stuff. I don't have any problem with that. But when you're collecting more and more and more, and you're working to yourself to the bone, who are you doing it for? There's people that would say, I'm doing it to provide a good life for my family. I was raised in such a way that we never had anything, and I want to have a better life for my kids. And that's certainly fine. That's a noble and well-intentioned idea. But really, ask yourself, would it be better for me to work 90 hours a week to provide a better life for my family so we can go on trips and I can buy pretty things for my wife and I can buy my kid a BMW and all the rest of these things? Is it better to do that or to actually just spend some real time with them? And unfortunately, what happens is the people that are supposed to be beneficiaries of our hard work wind up being casualties of that hard work. Because I've known a lot of kids that, never got upset over the fact that their dad bought them a 1994 Dodge Neon for their first car. But I've known a lot of people, a lot of kids, that were seriously messed up because dad bought them a $40,000 BMW thinking that would buy their love. There's a name for this. We call it daddy issues. We've got to understand that the people that are supposed to be beneficiaries of our hard work can oftentimes become casualties. And when we work and we work and we work and we work, and we produce and we collect, far too often, we lose out on the things in life that really, truly matter. I'm going to quit there. I can't believe, I don't know, the service went